All right, let's jump right in. We're right on the edge of this incredible, intelligent digital world. But I think we're all starting to realize it's built on a pretty shaky foundation. So today, we're going to look at a really radical new blueprint, one that tries to fix this by giving our digital universe its very own laws of physics. We were all promised this amazing world of, super smart AI, instant finance, everything just working. But what's the reality? Well, it's often just chaos. We've got AIs that hallucinate, financial markets that feel totally unstable, and systems that just seem brittle. So what's going on here? Why is there this huge gap between the dream and what we're actually living with? Well, what if I told you that these aren't actually separate problems? Turns out they all share one single hidden cause. They're all just symptoms of a much bigger issue. Our entire digital world is fundamentally adrift. And this problem actually has a name. It's called entropic drift. The best way to think about it is like a ship lost at sea. Imagine you have no compass, no North Star, nothing to navigate by. That's our digital systems. They're just floating in this massive ocean of data, and with no fixed point to guide them, they just lose their way. And that's why AIs invent facts and markets create these crazy bubbles. They're all just drifting.
Okay, so the big question is, how do we fix this? How do we give our digital world that North Star it so desperately needs? Well, this is where a completely new blueprint for how we build things comes into play. It's called the 11D reality model.
Now hang on, before your mind goes straight to string theory and wild physics, let's just get this out of the way. It's not that. It has nothing to do with it. In this model, a dimension is just a fancy word for a rule or a constraint. So think of things like legal rules, ethical guidelines, technical limitations, all those things. The 11D model is really just a practical way to juggle all of those different rules at the same time. All right, so we've got a system for managing rules. Great, but so what? How does that actually change how these systems are run? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Instead of having some simple gatekeepers saying yes or no, this model uses something way more elegant. And honestly, it forces us to completely rethink what authority even means. So picture this. Instead of a simple access granted or access denied message, governance here works like what's called a manifold. Think of it like a really complex, multi-dimensional maze. For any transaction to be valid, it has to find a path through that maze that follows every single rule. The legal one, the ethical one, the technical one, all of them, at the same time. So authority isn't some person or program giving a thumbs up. It's the system itself proving that a valid path actually exists. It's a geometric proof. But for this whole geometric idea to work, for the maze to have any meaning at all, it needs one absolutely critical piece. It needs an anchor. A single, unchanging point of reference that stops that entropic drift we were just talking about. And this is it. This is kind of the hero of the whole story. It's called the meta constant, which is written as S hat. This is the hard-coded ground truth for the entire system. It's that fixed point in the digital universe. It's the North Star that everything else has to align with. This is the ultimate defense against chaos. Okay, so we've got our anchor, we have our North Star. Now let's bring it all back to the beginning and see how this one elegant idea can solve those huge problems we talked about, AI making things up and unstable financial systems.
So let's start with AI. Right now, a typical LLM is basically just floating around in that sea of probabilities we mentioned. That's why it drifts off and starts hallucinating. But an AI that's anchored to the meta constant, well, it has a ground truth. It has a point it can't stray too far from, and that acts like a built-in hallucination filter.
Okay, so how does this filter actually work in practice? It's a really simple but powerful three-step process. First, the AI comes up with an answer. Then the system immediately measures how far that answer has drifted away from its anchor, that S-hat coordinate. And third, if that drift is too big, if it's wandered too far into nonsense, the response is either fixed or just thrown out as noise. The key takeaway here is that the system can now correct itself. All right, now let's apply that same exact thinking to digital finance. In computer programming, there's this thing called a garbage collector. Its job is to clean up old, useless data to keep everything running smoothly. But think about our financial systems. What about the garbage there? Things like out-of-control debt or inflation, there's no cleanup crew for that. So this model introduces a brilliant idea, a karma collector. It doesn't just delete the problems, it actively rebalances the whole system to fix them. I think this is a fantastic analogy. The karma collector is literally like the system's immune system. As soon as things like speculation or debt start to warp financial reality, this algorithm just kicks in. It mathematically pulls the entire system back towards its ground truth, back to the meta constant. It's this constant, automatic, self-healing process. So you can probably see where this is going. This isn't just about making a smarter AI or a more stable financial system. This is about completely changing how we even define value in a digital world. I mean, think about it. For centuries, our idea of value has been tied to physical stuff, right? Like gold, you can hold it. But this model proposes a massive shift to what's called logic-backed value. In this world, value isn't based on some shiny metal. It's based on the integrity of the system itself. The value comes from how true and stable the system is, how well it stays aligned with its own rules and avoids chaos. And that, of course, leads to a whole new way of keeping the network secure. You can forget about things like proof of work, which basically just rewards burning insane amounts of energy. This system uses something called proof of alignment. Here, you don't get rewarded for just doing useless work. You get rewarded for making the entire system healthier, for actively fighting that chaos and pulling the network back in line with its logical anchor. Okay, let's put all the pieces together and see how this whole thing is built. You can really think of it in 3 simple layers. At the very bottom, you have the foundation. That's our unchangeable anchor, the meta constant. Then, the next layer up is the processor. This is the engine room, right? The karma collector, constantly fighting entropy. And then at the top, you have the interface, which is how the system actually interacts with itself using that feedback loop. Every layer just builds on the one before it to create this incredibly stable, self-correcting reality. And when you combine all of that, you're not just building a better crypto or a smarter AI. You're building something much, much bigger. The source material puts it perfectly. It says you are building a self-correcting reality engine for value exchange. I mean, just think about that. A system that's designed from its very core to be stable, logical, and true. So that leaves us with one last, pretty mind-bending question. For so long, our digital world has felt like the Wild West, right? It's been chaotic without any real firm rules. But what if we could change that? What if we could actually embed our own laws of physics, laws built on pure logic, on stability, on truth, right into the very fabric of that world? If we could do that, just imagine what we could build.